Welcome to George and Jane YouTube video channel of adventures and hobbies. Please subscribe and like, comments welcome. Don't forget to browse the playlists.
Hi YouTubers, it's George in the garage. Still got this cough from COVID. It's still like a chest thing. Anyway, the reeds arrived, the glass reeds. So I've installed the coils with the reeds in. I've put little bits of wire on the end. I was going to take the end of the reed onto the connector here, but because this case the corners are not fixed, if I was pushing plugs in and out it might put strain on the glass of the reed. The reeds look like this. You can see in the packet. They're a glass tube with two connectors, one each end. The issue is because the reeds are longer than I thought, because the dimensions given from China were non-existent basically, and I was going to use a bit of wire like this. Yeah, so it goes like that, but I couldn't fit that and I couldn't easily fit this. It was so much strain on the glass, I wasn't going to risk it, because these are quite difficult to bend, you know, these coax. So I've actually gone with just this piece of wire along here. It's in a straight line, and this is the relay which will switch the dummy load in if I use it. So I'm going to run a wire from there to there, and then put a resistor to ground, so I can actually do an SWR test with a nano VNA, see if anything's changed, and hopefully it should be the same results as I had before. So that's my next job. Now the SWR looks a bit sharp here, but I've actually gone from 1 meg to 85 meg, and at 40 meg it's 1.5, and the bands I'm interested in are 20 meter band, which is 1.2, and the 40 meter band is about 1.1 to 1, which is fine for the bands I use, but it's, you can see it's just a hodgepodge of wires at the moment. You know, this is a rough dummy load, so yeah, it hasn't changed enough for me to worry too much with the wiring. I've got to do the same test when I compare the coils with a dummy load on each of these outlets, and that will probably be done today if I get a move on. Right, switch off the nano VNA. This is a dummy load. You can see the wires all over the place, you know, here. So let me disconnect that. Okay, UB-tubers, this is the unit, and with all the wiring in, and with no power, the SWR is below 1.2. So if the power fails to this unit, this small relay here switches in a dummy load, and I've just put this in temporary. I've got a proper dummy load when I can find it to put onto the case here. This bit of foam here is holding the circuit board in at the moment, because I'm using double-sided adhesive tape to hold the circuit board in. The LEDs are connected, And I'm just going to put this bench light out. Okay, no, it's too dark. Why don't I put it back on? Right, I'll try and demonstrate it. So at the moment, because there's no power to it, this relay is closed, normally closed, and it switches as dummy loading. As soon as any input, any of these gets power, this goes open circuit, the dummy load, and will switch in whatever's connected to the back sockets. So let's just try this. Right, that's number one, which will be this one. And if you look at, I'll turn the light out for this, and here's the showing the SWR into the dummy load. As soon as it gets power, the dummy load gets switched out and it switches in the first antenna socket there. It applies to any input. Let's just try another one. So any input. Right, so as number 4, I think it is. Number 3, sorry. So as soon as number 3 relay clicks in and switches in the third socket, the SWR goes off the scale because it's open circuit. Now, to prove this is working, I shall put a dummy load on that outlet like that. Okay, and when I switch, the other dummy load will go in. Look, there you go. So that's number 3, and that's got the dummy load on. So if there was an aerial on there, it would switch it. Now that's going to be my next test, is to get a lead and put my transmitter into it and check the SWR with the transmitter connected. Well, it's 99.9% finished, other than the control unit which goes on the end of the wire. It's mine's ended up more complicated than most people would probably want, because I've done a few things which would be useful for me in the design, and what I've done, I've incorporated here an additional relay, and what that's for is if this cable gets severed for any reason, it means if you don't know straight away, as it's a remote unit, you know, this could be buried, this cable, if this gets severed, none of the relays are selected, which means the transmitter is open circuit, and I didn't like that for me, so I modified it so that this relay is on when any of these are switched on. If this power cable fails, this relay will go to normally closed, and sitting in that corner is a 50 ohm dummy load. I think it's rated at 250 watts. However, this heatsink is not big enough, the case is not big enough to handle 250 watts. So that's the extra precaution I wanted. The other thing I wanted on it was a direct indication of which aerial was operational in this unit. So if this is in a box down the garden, I know straight away that if that's a light, that's the socket that's activated. Now I'm going to have a repeater of this on the main switch unit. So if it's on position 1, I get a light here. I'll also get a light at the other end of all the cable. I've had to add these power resistors because for some reason I needed to have less windings on the coils. I think it's possibly to do with these Chinese reed switches. I don't know. This bit of foam here stuck in is just to hold this board. This board is insulated from the case, the circuit board, and on this circuit board contains the flyback diodes for the coils, and that's to help back EMF. I could actually have put the diodes directly on the windings, which I didn't think about at the time, but yeah. And the other thing I've done, I've added screens in between these. Now I've measured the SWR through the unit, and it's about 1.4 to 1 at 60 meg. At the bands I'm interested in, which is basically the normal hand bands, 20 meter and 40 meter bands, it's less than 1.2 to 1, and it might be better than that when it's got proper aerials on, rather than just using the dummy node and the nano VNA. And of course the case is not grounded at all, but there's a wing nut at the end which allows me to have it to a ground stake. What else? Yeah, there's also another way I'm going to use this unit, so I'll just stop the camera for the time being. As well as having tuned aerials, I will be using bandpass filters on it as well. So on this end I'll have a bandpass filter 14 meg. On this end I'll have a bandpass filter for 7 meg, you know, the 40 and 20 meter bands. I slipped up with a design. If I'd have given a bigger space between these connectors, I may have got them two side by side, but I can fit that one end and one the other end. So the next part of this video will be the actual control unit to actually switch between the four aerials. And yeah, so thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like. And it's absolutely throwing it down with rain at the moment, which is what we want for the garden.
Welcome to George and Jane YouTube video channel of adventures and hobbies. Please subscribe and like, comments welcome. Don't forget to browse the playlists.